Okay, we'll get started. So welcome everyone to this webinar from Cambridge Centre for Evaluation and Monitoring, which is all about promoting positive student wellbeing in schools with the Cambridge Wellbeing Check. So before we start the webinar, just to get into a few housekeeping notes. To ensure good sound quality, all members of the audience are muted. If you'd like to ask a question, please do ask questions as we go through the session, or if you have any at the end. You can use the question box located on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll make sure we answer all the questions, or as many as we can, at the end of the webinar. But if there's anything during the session that you'd like us to go over, please do post your questions as we go through. You will receive a certificate of attendance sent to your email inbox 1 hour after the webinar finishes, and you will receive a copy of the webinar recording sent via email next week. So we'd also love to hear where you're joining us from today, so please feel free to use the question box or the chat box to introduce yourself. We'd also love to know how you measure student wellbeing in your school. Do you have any methods that you use, or is this something that's really new to you? Before we get into the main content of the session, I'll just say a few words to introduce Cambridge Chem. So we've been working with schools for 40 years in over 100 countries. We're known for our evidence-based research approach to baseline and formative assessments using extensive data sets to support future outcomes and development. We work with schools, ministries and associations to transform the outcomes of the students they teach. In 2019, we became part of the University of Cambridge, which has supported our reach and abilities to support young people across the world. We help teachers turn data into knowledge, we bridge the gap between research and practice, and we provide evidence to support good decision making. So I'll now hand over to Mark Fraser, who is our Teaching and Learning Lead, to find out more about the Cambridge Wellbeing Check.
Thanks very much, Cora, and welcome along this afternoon or this evening, wherever you're joining us from. You're very welcome. And just very quickly, I'm, as Cora said, Teaching and Learning Lead at the Centre for Evaluation and Monitoring. Some of you will know us as CHEM or CEM. I'm a former teacher and head teacher who came to join the organisation about 8 years ago, and I'm a primary specialist by training. But the webinar this afternoon hopefully will apply to all age ranges. So we're going to be talking about some fairly core and fundamental things. As Cora said, it would be great if you could drop any questions in, and we'll try and answer them as we go. If there's anything that you'd like to ask about, please just drop it into the chat box. And just before we get going, just have a quick look at what we will be covering this afternoon or this evening. Firstly, we're just going to be having a look at well-being and how we define it, what we think it is, and why it's important, why it's worthwhile assessing students or learners' well-being, and we'll then tell you a little bit about the Cambridge Wellbeing Check and the reports that go with it, and then kind of come back right at the end at point 5 there and think about I'll just be thinking, if I was back in school, what might I do to be improving the well-being of my students or my learners, and hopefully point you in the direction of some resources that you might be able to use. But before we begin, a brief recap on the recent past. And it's interesting, we've done variations on this webinar over the last few months, and quite often, beg your pardon if you heard a sharp sound there, we have a fire alarm going off, but I think it's a drill, fortunately. Anyway, the wellbeing landscape for children and young people in the UK, as well as more widely, has changed massively over the last 2 or 3 years, as we know. This is a particularly interesting report. Again, some of these things are UK-centric, but I think the themes apply wherever you are. And this was taken in quite recently. I think the survey was published just last year, but it does draw on data that was gathered from 2019 to 2020. So bearing in mind, this is just before the kind of pandemic struck. And there's some interesting graphs that show for children and young people some things are fairly constant. This is an indication of their happiness in different aspects of life, family, life as a whole, and in school. And you can see in the family, it's kind of bouncing along. It's more or less, you know, it's fluctuating a little bit, but it's fairly consistent, fairly level. But the two graphs on the one in the middle there and the one to the right tell a very different story. Life as a whole, that looks very much like a downward trend in satisfaction there. School, far more erratic, but generally the trend is down from kind of 2009-10. Things look as if they've been going downhill in general terms. So interesting that family life seems to be fairly stable. So that's good news, I suppose. But from an educational point of view, this does not look to be a great picture. So we'll be thinking a little bit about what can we do about this afternoon, and how can we improve things. A second bit of evidence we've got here is from a couple of colleagues in Cambridge, Matthew Carroll and Filio Constantinou, who recently published this. It's available on the Cambridge website. If you're interested in reading any of these documents, when you get the slides, you can see we've got some links at the bottom or some references that you can follow. And it says that in the aftermath of the pandemic, they looked at teachers' experiences through various surveys and questionnaires that they put out. And as well as students, teachers have reported that they, unsurprisingly, have been impacted by the pandemic. And in some ways, this was to do with workload. But for students, it tended to be kind of isolation and disruption to normal schooling that appeared to do the damage. Generally, though, it's slightly gloomy in that of 72% of the respondents felt that students' well-being was worse. I think this graph shows us in a little bit more detail here. So we've got quite a large number, a cumulative 72% between a little worse and much worse. That students, this is the perception of teachers of their students' well-being. So it's declined a little bit. I don't think this will come as a surprise. And really, this is just a little bit of the background that we've all lived through. We've seen this. So I think we just need to be considering what can we do to counteract this. I suppose the first step is just to think about what well-being means. Now, there's a lot of other surveys out there and reports, but very few of them apply directly to the school or college context. Generally, they take a fairly holistic view of student life, but as I'll explain in a little while, the work we've been doing is specifically related to students' feelings and functioning in school or college. The paper I'm referring to is this one, which is, again, you can just follow the link and you can hopefully find it. If not, drop us a line and we can send you a copy. But it's pre-pandemic, the research, but we still think it is very relevant. And when we were thinking, we knew there was in Chem, when we were talking about what can we do to support well-being, we knew that there must be some research on our own doorstep. Being part of the world of Cambridge, it opens up a whole world of possibilities. And sure enough, there's a paper by Ros McClellan and Susan Stewart from the Faculty of Education, and they reviewed a wide range of literature focusing on young people's well-being in school. And they argue that as educators, it's important to investigate well-being in the school context. And if that is understood more clearly and in greater detail, well, more importantly, you can change the experience that young people have. Their research divides the two areas I mentioned, how students are feeling and functioning. It divides those areas into 4 sub-areas. So we've got life satisfaction, how students experience life and how content they are with that. Negative emotions, their sort of tendencies to maybe dwell on negative thoughts or just feel sad or down. In terms of functioning, we have interpersonal well-being, how much students experience feeling connected with others and how they relate to others around them. And competence well-being, that's basically how how they feel they are equipped to face life, be it academic life or life once they leave school and in the workplace more broadly. So 4 substrands of the 2 key pillars, which are how students are feeling and how students are functioning. What else do we know about well-being? Well, we know it's a subjective psychological state, so that means it changes over time. That could be from day to day, month to month, or even hour to hour. And it changes according to context. And we know that students may be feeling really well supported and loved and cared for at home, but that might be very different in school or vice versa. So it's important that as teachers, we kind of understand those 2 sort of worlds. They may be very similar worlds for a lot of children, or they may be very, very different worlds for others. And also children from the the same or very similar physical circumstances can experience different levels of well-being. So there's not too many, so although you've got materialistic conditions being very, very similar, children can be feeling and functioning very, very differently depending on who they are and where they are and when we're thinking of. Children, as we know, maybe seem to be all right. On the surface, things may look fine, but really, if we want to find out how they are actually feeling, because we can see them functioning perhaps, but we can't really tell how they're feeling, we need to ask them. We need to ask them, and how can we do that? We'll come to that in a little while. But firstly, why is well-being in school important? Well, in a nutshell, we think it's essential to academic success. We know from research that well-being is linked with academic success, mainly because well-being is linked with some forms of motivation. Unsurprisingly, students who are well motivated want to learn and unsurprisingly make progress. It's also linked to engagement. That's attendance, if you like, presenteeism. Students with lower levels of well-being are more likely to play truant, that's to skip school, and we know if they're not in school, it's unlikely that they're learning in the way we'd like them to learn. So again, going back to my time in school, this was a key metric. Attendance was vital, and I think just looking at some of the DFE stats over the last year or 2, it looks like we've slid several percentage points since the pandemic. So I think in my day, 8 years ago, we were kind of hovering around the 96, 97% mark in my school, which was pretty good. But I think today the average is something like 93.2% in England. It could be variable, in other parts of the world, but I'm sure a lot of places are seeing a similar trend. And again, a little bit more further evidence that well-being's linked to academic performance. We've got 2 interesting papers cited here. We've got Gutman and Vorhus, and Sildo, Thalyi, and Ferron have identified correlations between well-being and educational performance. Again, shouldn't come as a massive surprise, we think. So this is mainly in the UK and the US. But that engagement, that motivation is central. However, a couple of our colleagues in Cambridge, we've got Irenka Suto and Tom Benton, who published a paper last year. They did a review of literature, and one of the things that they picked out was not only is well-being linked to success, the way well-being is managed in school is really important as well. So the whole school approach and policy to well-being is pivotal, and if you get that right, you improve attainment, you improve achievement, your outcomes generally for students improve. So that was from a management point of view. I'll be coming back to that later on when we look at some of the freely available resources we've got out there. Now, section 3 here, I think just a single slide really following this one. Why should we assess well-being? I think it could all be summed up just here. Why should you assess anything? Why should you assess maths, PE, history, art, any of these conventional subjects that we constantly assess on an ongoing basis in school. Because assessment sometimes has a negative connotation, but really when I talk about assessing well-being, all I'm talking about is gathering information, finding out facts, measuring to an extent. But basically what I mean here is if you can obtain better information about anything, well, you increase your understanding of it. So that's as true of well-being as it is of maths or physics. So it's an information gathering exercise. As we said, as skilled though teachers may be, we can see how students are functioning, but we do not always see how they're feeling, that's for sure. So we need to think about how we can do that. And again, touched on this a moment or two ago, but going back to that Good Childhood report, they emphasize the rise in importance of finding out about students' well-being. But basically, they point out a fairly obvious thing, but maybe it has been overlooked for years, that we need to ask children themselves about their well-being rather than relying on adults to make assumptions. So if you wanted to use a well-being check, what sort of things would you want it to do? I think I'd want it to do at least 4 things here. And I think it would be a case of it would allow me to, it would be a tool really to help me teach and explore well-being with students. It would be a way of exploring what they thought and how they felt, how they functioned. And I would probably want to use a well-being check to evaluate the understanding of students' well-being itself perhaps, but understand individual levels of well-being and aggregate that up into groups. Could be classes, year groups, whole schools. And then probably when I'd identified some of the issues that were prevalent in my school, I'd want to put something in place, some kind of intervention program there. And then a while later, I'd want to come back and evaluate the impact, find out if it had worked. If it's worked, great. If it hasn't worked, well, maybe I need to think about doing something else. Again, it's just that feedback loop. So briefly, before we look at the things that we might be able to do in school, Cambridge, the title of this webinar is the Cambridge Wellbeing Check. We do have a system that I can just tell you a little bit about. I'm not going to dwell much on it, but what you might find interesting, I think, is if you're planning to use your own, whether it's this or it's anything else, what kind of information can you gather? So you need it to be fairly flexible. So a system like ours runs on any system, PC, tablet, laptop. There's no paperwork or marking. It's quick and easy. It's based on the 22 questions which come from the original research. So that paper I told you about a few minutes ago, questions come straight from there. And it's flexible, fits around the school day, and you can use it as much as you want. And it asks, if you're asking any questions of children, maybe you should be asking questions a little bit like this, because we need them to be incredibly simple. We're not trying to trick children. We're not trying to find out how good their understanding of English is. This is about getting to the heart of the matter and finding out how they're feeling. So if you are constructing your own questionnaire, keep it simple. Keep the language really, really basic. Because sometimes the children who have maybe some of the greatest issues are children who perhaps have, or greatest well-being issues, I should say, are maybe children who've recently arrived in your school. They may have come from, another place where for them English was not a first language. So language may be a real barrier here. Or if they've moved around schools an awful lot, we know their children look out for, because sometimes those students just do not have the core skills of literacy developed to a great enough extent. So keep it really, really basic, and keep the scale simple to understand. So the scale we've used is just something that just runs, it's all about frequency of things happening. So from us never happening to always happening. And we just use that throughout. And also we put in a couple of kind of safeguards, safety net kinds of questions here, just to check, because sometimes if students are disengaged, they will just flick through an assessment. Click, 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 click. I'm just going to randomly click through, then I can go out, have my lunch, or do whatever they're going to go and do. So we put in some, very simple questions like, when I'm at school, I feel happy. When I'm at school, I feel sad. Because if you saw somebody who was always happy, yet simultaneously always sad, you'd be thinking, right, Mark hasn't quite taken this seriously. And that's just a cue for a discussion with Mark. Can I just ask you about this? Can I just sort of ask why you sometimes, you're always happy, but you always feel sad? What's going on? So just a common sense check. So we scale those scores, 5 being high, and then we flip the scale for the negatively phrased questions. And then we report it in various ways. Again, you might want to think if you're designing your own or you'd like to use this, there's something here for everybody, because I don't pretend you can read these bits of text down here, but basically for every question, we have a row. And in the simplest form, it's just a tick in the box for the response given. But we use that data and we can aggregate it to section level for students and just present little bar graphs and flag very low response rates, just because that's, well, again, we are not pretending to be a clinical service here. This is not a clinical instrument in any way. All we're trying to do is shine a light on areas where you as teachers can go and find out a little bit more about why your students are feeling or functioning in a particular way. And we're just using color to draw your eye to that. You can see, you can break down the questions, and again, using color, you can see here we've got in this particular group of children here, again, this is just dummy data, but you can see 20%, 1/5 of the group felt that they were not doing well a lot of the time. So again, that's a big chunk of the population. So this is not an answer to any of these problems, but we're just highlighting a potential issue. And again, our job as teachers is to think about this. How can we support our children so they're not feeling negative like that? We need to be maybe thinking about things that we do in our pastoral groups or our whole school support systems, all of these different things that can be brought to brought out to help out. Again, there's a text-based report as well. We try to avoid stats a lot of the time when we have children who maybe get a little bit hung up on tiny differences in scores. So if you feel it would be better to give qualitative feedback, well, there's a way of doing that. And also, we've got, I'm not going to show them all, but when you get the slides, you can browse through and see there are 12 reports now. So this little table that you can look at tells you when you might use them and with whom. Again, our resources have some lesson plans, because as we said, don't use a wellbeing check in isolation, use it as part of a program. Make sure children and students understand what wellbeing is, and then think about how it can be improved. And you can do that collaboratively, it can be done individually, but there's some really nice little activities in amongst it all as well, because we think that it's all well and good asking children to respond to a survey, but quite often we know students give the answers that they think you want to hear. So a crafty way of finding out more information, I think, is to follow some of the activities in the lesson plans here, where it might just be a group activity or a class activity that can be done sort of semi-anonymously, with little ideas boxes or response boxes or sticky note exercises, where we're asking students how they feel, and they don't need to do this publicly. They can share their sort of fears and their concerns in a discreet and safe environment. So you're gathering information formally, if you like, through an instrument like I've just shown you, the Wellbeing Check, but also there's that kind of soft gathering of information as well. Really, really important. And again, it's a skill teachers have. You know your students, you know how to tread softly, you know how to gather that information sensitively and handle it with care. And we're just trying to provide a vehicle that will help you to do that. Again, quite lengthy documents, about 30 pages, and they can be used as a script or cherry picked from, as good teachers do. And again, if you used our system, we've got lots of guidance, documentation, online support, and you can ring people up and talk to them. So just going to pause for breath there and just wonder, Cora, are there any questions we need to be thinking about, or is anybody asking anything or telling us anything interesting?
Yeah, so I asked the audience what they would most like to find out about their students' wellbeing and what they might find useful. And one of the audience members said they'd like to find out how confident students feel in facing any kind of challenge and what kind of confidence levels they might have. And we also have a question about how inclusive these resources are and how applicable they are to different students. How applicable they are to different students and different countries even.
Well, we think it's universally useful just because this is suitable for children from age 7 to 18 and students up to age 18, just because of the simplicity of it, and it's a short, snappy questionnaire that you can use, and again, with very, very simple carrier language, as we would call it. It's been boiled down to the basics. And again, it's one of those things that once the student's seen it once, they will probably become tuned into it. The questions don't change. They don't change just because then you can monitor things over time. So if you're asking a different set of questions each time, you wouldn't be able to see how things were changing, because that's one of the other things that you'd like to do with this, presumably, is to monitor whether it's termly or annually how your students are feeling and functioning. But again, I think it's useful. Some special needs students may need support, but it can be used on multiple devices with touchpad or mouse, your traditional mouse, or even arrow keys for students who have those particular needs. And again, from a accessibility language point of view, we think we've made it as simple as possible, but it is just available in English at the moment. So that is something that I know is being looked at more widely. Okay, so thinking just to round off then, point 5 here is, how can we improve well-being in schools? And I've thought about what I would do if I was in school, either from a let's set up a policy because we haven't got one. You might be in a school where you've never had a policy or a system in place, or you may like to review your policy. Now, this document, again, should be available for all to see, whether you're in an independent school or international school or you're in the UK. You should be able to get at this. Again, the link is at the bottom of the page. It's a few years old. This is 8 years old. This is from 2015. And this is something that was just appearing about the time I left school. However, I think it's definitely worth looking at again if you want a very, very simple model of how to improve outcomes for students. It's got a model which we'll come to on the next page, but it's basically 8 steps. And again, in the broader sort of literature within the document, it does explain that things like this mental health of children and young people in England survey 2020, that this was originally published in 2015, but it has been sort of updated since, because it makes reference to more recent surveys. Anyway, the news is a little bit gloomy, and it's children are not as positively placed as they once were. And again, surprise, surprise, the pandemic has not helped. Anyway, the model of 8, promoting a whole school approach to mental health and well-being is quite simple, and it's all summarized in this document. There are 8 things. I've circled 3 just to focus on, but whether you're using our check or you're using your own, you need to be using something, I think, to be fully ticking all the boxes on this model here. Starting at the bottom, the 6 o'clock position there, you need to kind of identify need and monitor impact. So I think that is asking students about their well-being and looking for the emergent themes and the trends, and then doing something about it. Of course, like I said, coming back and monitoring it. But also, other things that this is allowing you to do is to enable a student voice. and allowing that voice to influence decisions. Those decisions may be relating to the provision that you put in school to support your students, or how you design your curriculum, which is the top point there as well. So again, promoting resilience and supporting social and emotional learning are pillars of everything we're trying to do in school. And if you are not asking students about their well-being, if you're not finding out about that, whatever their age, it's going to be difficult for you to address that point. There are other things in here. I mean, targeted support. This may actually allow you to focus your resources slightly differently. And also just generally, promote a positive ethos in your school. If it's an environment where respect matters, well, you need to be finding out what your people think. This is not available for teachers yet, but again, there are other things out there that you might want to use. And again, can't directly promote any other sort of services here at the moment, other than a couple of ones we've partnered with, but there are some really nice resources for teachers out there if you haven't already seen them. Again, the link to the model is in the bottom corner there. And our Wellbeing Check, or any Wellbeing Check, should help you to do a lot of these things. One fabulous website we are not connected with, but is there, and it's free to use, is the annafreud.org site. Again, I've been to a couple of conferences where I've seen other people talk about well-being, and they've also picked this one out. So it's a bit of a personal favorite, but we're not connected in any way, but I think it's a really worthwhile place to go and look. Again, you can, from a school point of view, there's that section about leading change, working together as a staff, understanding your students' need, promoting well-being, and supporting your staff. So there's a little bit of something for everyone there. Really, really nice resource. So please do have a look. But also with any of the resources, this one or the one the ones I'm about to show you, please do check that the resources are culturally appropriate and age appropriate for your students before sharing more widely. One organization that we have recently partnered with is teentips.co.uk. Again, we really like the look of this one. They offer some free advice for students and for parents, but there are paid services and support available there for schools as well. But again, have a look at that. Really, really nice, beautifully presented. And then one more organization that we've been working with as well just recently, Tooled Up Education. Again, they have some, free resources and paid resources, but it's a really nice academic approach to well-being at a very, very accessible level. They take academic research and package it up into a really digestible format, snappy little articles and blog posts, some for teachers in particular, some really, really nice articles that you can read while you're drinking a cup of tea, and just little ideas about what you can do in your setting to support your students. And then one thing that's completely free, just to round off with, I mentioned a little while ago about sometimes it's the students who arrive in school out of sync with other students, they're late admissions, or the mid-year admissions, and they've come from somewhere else. They're the students you maybe need to look out for. They're the ones that you need to make sure have somebody to go to. Whether you're 5 or 55 or whatever age, you always need somebody to turn to. And as a teacher, you can make sure, and as a school leader for certain, that every student has formed at least one strong, supportive, appropriate relationship with an adult in school, just to have that quiet word with. And speaking of quiet, like I was always taught by my sort of mentors when going through my teacher training, it's the quiet ones to watch out for. It's the children who never really make a fuss, who sometimes need that support. And we just need to ask them in a really discreet, supportive and positive way. And with that, I think that's all I've got to say, unless we've got any more questions, which Cora will have a look at now. Thank you so much for listening. You can find out more about our wellbeing things by going to the links there. And if there's anything on the chat box there, we'll have a look at that as well. But thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Mark. So we've got some time left in the session to run through any questions. So if there's anything we talked about that you'd like to know more about or to add any questions, please do that now and we'll get round to them. So just while people are adding some questions, we had a couple of comments. There was some discussion going on. So Leonard was saying that he would find it really interesting to find out students' perceptions of school and friendships, and they'd find this data and this information really useful to make adjustments to their learning environment and to benefit their learning.
That's great. That's good.
Let's see, there was also we had another comment saying they found it really interesting to find out how students' well-being is linked to their academic performance in school, and it was nice to see that connection. And we have a question here. So perhaps some of our audience members are classroom teachers or work as part of the pastoral or support team. How might they be able to open up some discussions with the senior leader team or head teachers about the importance of wellbeing in the school?
Well, I think from some of the resources we've referred to, and certainly things like the original paper, that we based a lot of our work on, they're really good ways of just building an argument to go and see a member of staff, just because a senior member of staff, just because there is a great deal of evidence that's gone into producing those reports and explaining the importance of it. And again, the government reports, the Good Childhood Survey and some of the other documentation, the message is loud and clear in there that well-being of teachers and young people is becoming increasingly, how can we say, well, diminished, sadly, in many ways. So we've got to be doing something about this. We've got to be supporting our staff. We've got to be supporting our students. And I would have thought most senior leaders would understand that. But I suppose what you could do is be showing them things like the questionnaire that's outlined in the original survey and think, we need something like this. We need to be using either the Cambridge Wellbeing Check or we need to be looking elsewhere. Just because we need to be finding out what our students actually feel and actually think, just because we do not know that by looking at them. And as it says in the Good Childhood report, we've got to be talking to our children in a safe and discreet, confidential way. We've got to build trust, find out what they think, and then do something to help them.
Thank you, that's exactly right. And someone is agreeing here, saying wellbeing can be difficult, especially if students find it hard to open up. So this is a really great tool for that. We also
and don't forget as I say, the crafty, sneaky ways of just all those low-key games that you can be playing in pastoral sessions, feelings and functioning. How are you feeling today? How you could have mood boards or little kind of secret notes posted into the box that the teacher can, anonymous notes, just to say, tell the teacher how you're feeling today. For the younger children, for older children, there are other ways of doing that a bit more in a more mature fashion. But again, it's about offering that safe space. But also, as the teacher, you've got then a massive responsibility to kind of do something about that, and that's not easy. So hopefully, some of the resources we've pointed you to can help with that as well.
Great, thanks, Mark. We had a question as well. I know you touched on this at the beginning of the session about the link between wellbeing and academic achievement, and how strong is that connection? How important is that connection? That's quite a big question to answer.
Yeah, again, when you get the slides, or you can sort of backtrack through them and have a look for those two papers. And again, if you have problems accessing them, just let us know and we can maybe help you out with that. But again, it's academic. Some of these papers are quite heavy going, but if you just read the summary at the start, and you'll get the message from them. But I think they are also meta studies as well. So they've looked, it's a study of studies, if you like, and looking at various literature and the available evidence that was out there. It's in some ways it's unsurprising, I feel, as a teacher, that you think, unless, because you want your students to be motivated, you want them to be engaged. If they were sitting there, not doing what you wanted them to, you would be worried. So I don't think it's kind of massively surprising in that sense, but it's interesting. Like a lot of these things that we take for granted, we just make assumptions that this research has actually shown that it does make a difference. But again, have a look through the slides when they come out, and hopefully that would be a good sort of first point of contact for you to make further inquiries.
Brill, thank you. We had a question a little bit earlier on. I know we talked about the group or classroom reporting and how a teacher might use that group data to inform their lessons or discussions around well-being. And I think we've got time for a couple more questions, so if anyone has anything.
Sorry, I'm just skipped through on the slides there, but yes, you get, again, in a lot of systems, and again, this is the Cambridge one, but others do very similar things, where you've got a breakdown of the responses. I think that's particularly useful to understanding what's going on in your class or your group, your year group, your school. So as mentioned, this is not any diagnostic tool in the sense it's not telling you exactly what the cause of this is, but it's highlighting that there may be a problem. In this example, as I said, we've got maybe a fifth of this class who feel that they are quite often not doing very well in school. So is it just a confidence issue? Do they just need a bit of a boost? Or actually, are their skills not quite right, not up to scratch? So again, as a school, you've got to kind of make the investigation based on this kind of information. But it's going to reveal broad themes. And then you can think about how you tackle them. And there's no guarantee that you're going to get that right first time. So I suppose it's about having a look at your data, looking for those, not the sort of the niggly little things, but the broad recurring problems or concerns that are coming up, and going for those first. Putting something in place to address that concern, and then a year or so later down the line, you need to come back and look at your data again. But again, it could be something as simple as maybe it is just confidence in some ways. So that's sort of, it's not ideal, but you can build students' confidence with the appropriate encouragement and support. It's not an insurmountable problem. So there are all sorts of resources out there that would just give that little bit of reassurance and the boost that students need. Equally, there might be things that you're looking at sort of redesigning your curriculum for, much bigger overarching problems. So again, it's going to vary from school to school. So it's just up to you to kind of make investigations, have a look, and try something out. Don't be frightened to try it, and then measure it again. And if it works, brilliant. If it doesn't work, try something else. But hopefully we can help you sort of shine a torch into a dark corner and maybe identify some of these problems, ideally before they become too deep-rooted.
Great, thank you. So I've had a look through, and I think that's all the questions we have, and we're just about at time. So just to say thank you to our presenter, Mark, today, for taking us through the session. If you found this webinar interesting and would like to have a deeper conversation about Cambridge Chem assessments and how we can support your school, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can email us at chem@cambridge.org, or all of our contact information is available on our website. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you soon at another webinar. Thanks, everyone.